Hello, I am Tarık Toros, and welcome to What's Happening in Turkey. In recent years, the moral compass of global politics has become increasingly blurred. While ethical considerations haven't completely disappeared, they are fading fast. Today, authoritarian leaders, dictators, and democratically elected officials all sit at the same table. Past actions and human rights records seem to matter less and less. Take Iran, for example. Just last year, 975 people were executed, an average of 5 executions per day in the last quarter alone. Meanwhile, in western Syria, mass killings have been taking place for days. In the coastal cities of Latakia and Tartus, home to significant Alawite communities, civilians are being massacred. Yet, international media largely ignores the atrocities, dismissing them as just another episode of clashes involving pro-Assad forces. Turkey, in keeping with the shifting norms of this era, has adopted a pragmatic approach, engaging with all sides. The past no longer matters. Political interests take precedence over historical grievances. The Syrian crisis and Turkey's silence. Let's start with Syria. In the capital, Damascus, armed groups led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which controls parts of the city, have targeted majority Alawite neighborhoods, killing scores of civilians. The violence escalated on the 6th of March, when a suspect in the village of Beytana was not handed over to regime forces. What followed was a wave of brutal torture and executions. While I can't show the full extent of the violence, the footage is real. These videos, many of them recorded and shared by regime forces themselves, have been verified by independent journalists and organizations. For instance, BBC Verify confirmed the authenticity of 2 videos from Latakia showing a corpse being tied a car and dragged through the streets. According to the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the death toll has exceeded 250. Including 162 civilians, killed in 5 separate massacres. The organization reports that the vast majority of victims were executed by forces linked to the Ministry of Defense and the Interior Ministry. Among the dead are 13 women and 5 children. French news agency AFP estimates that over 300 Alawites have been massacred by HDS forces. Meanwhile, the Syrian Network for Human Rights reports that 100 pro-regime fighters have also been killed in the clashes. Despite this humanitarian catastrophe unfolding right on its doorstep, Turkey has remained silent. Neither President Erdoğan nor any government official has made a statement. Turkish media has largely ignored the crisis, and those that did cover it downplayed the events, framing them as mere clashes with pro-Assad forces. Why is this silence? These are 2 key reasons. 1. The victims belong to the Alawite sect, a minority group that has long been the target of sectarian hostility in Turkey. 2. Turkey is carefully managing its delicate relationship with the Damascus government. This deep-seated bias against Alawites is evident in the social media activity of pro-government figures, who openly celebrate the massacres, dehumanizing Alawites and glorifying their extermination. Even Turkey's political opposition has been hesitant to speak out. CHP leader Özgür Özel, wary of provoking the government, offered only a caution statement referring to rising civilian casualties and concerns over massacres targeting minorities. Yet, even this mild response was met with backlash. The pro-government newspaper Yeni Şafak published a provocative article justifying the killings, accusing Alawites of being imperialist lapdogs and attacking Özel for his statement using derogatory language. As executions and massacres in Latakia and Tartus intensify, fears of a full-scale sectarian war are growing. While international organizations and the UN have condemned the violence, the Alawite community remains vulnerable. The situation is deteriorating rapidly with little sign of intervention. The New World Order, shaped by chaos. The international silence on state-led massacres in the Middle East is partly due to the ongoing geopolitical uncertainty, especially following the US elections. Washington has yet to set a clear foreign policy direction, and this ambiguity has allowed authoritarian regimes to act with impunity. Trump's second term has begun with major surprises. His erratic, day-to-day decision-making has stripped the White House of its credibility. He has already delayed tariffs on Canada and Mexico twice, causing economic instability. In doing so, he has effectively signaled the end of the so-called American century. From now on, the global order will undergo irreversible changes. But this isn't a random development. It's a deliberate shift, backed by the financial groups that support Trump. In the short term, no stable solution is in sight. The world has entered a chaotic period, one of the biggest geopolitical ruptures since the collapse of the Soviet Union. This shift became undeniable after Trump's tense meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukraine and Turkey's balancing act. The world has now seen how Trump reacts under pressure. His broader goal remains unchanged: to remove Zelensky and install a pro-Russian leader in Kyiv. Zelensky's critical mistake, one that may permanently damage his relationship with Washington, was his remark that you don't feel the war now, but you will feel it in the future. This statement reportedly enraged Trump.
You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
In response to this diplomatic fallout, European leaders held an emergency meeting in London on 2nd of March, hosted by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Canada and Turkey were also present, though notably, Turkey only sent its foreign minister rather than President Erdoğan himself. Most likely Erdoğan's absence was due to health reasons, otherwise he wouldn't have hosted Zelensky in Ankara just a week prior. Recently, Turkey has aligned itself with the Western Alliance in two major geopolitical shifts. 1. Supporting efforts to weaken the Assad regime in Syria. 2. Positioning itself strategically in the Ukraine conflict. While Erdoğan has distanced himself from Moscow, he remains cautious about Trump, careful not to provoke him. At the same time, he is actively trying to secure Turkey's place in European diplomatic circles, given Europe's need for strategic allies. Turkey's overtures are not going unnoticed. Turkey's domestic crisis, a democracy in decline. In 2025, the principle of non-intervention in domestic affairs has become the global norm. Unfortunately, this benefits authoritarian regimes like Turkey. Turkey has become a country where international court rulings are ignored, and anyone who opposes the government faces legal persecution. The pro-government judiciary has now jailed a third CHP-affiliated mayor in Istanbul, and 6 ongoing investigations loom over Ekrem İmamoğlu, the opposition's presidential hopeful. Just last week, authorities raided a media company affiliated with his municipality. Meanwhile, in a deeply ironic move, the Turkish government is attempting to initiate a new peace process with the Kurdish political movement, despite its relentless crackdown on Kurdish leaders. Selahattin Demirtas, the most prominent figure in Kurdish politics, has been in prison for over 8 years. Last week, he was briefly seen by his wife's side at the hospital, where she underwent surgery. That fleeting moment, one of the few glimpses of warmth from Turkey in recent weeks, stood in stark contrast to the political climate of repression. Final thoughts. The road ahead for Turkey remains steep and uncertain, while we must not lose hope. The troubling developments both domestically and internationally paint a grim picture. I am Tarık Toros. You have been watching What's Happening in Turkey. See you next week.